Imagine receiving a letter from the last living apostle of Jesus, a personal note filled with encouragement, warning, and guidance. That's what we find in 3 John, the shortest book in the New Testament, yet one packed with timeless lessons. In just 15 verses, John highlights 3 people whose lives point in radically different directions: one faithful, one destructive, and one exemplary. Their stories force us to ask, what does it really mean to walk in the truth? And more personally, which example are we following today? John begins his 3rd letter by identifying himself as the elder. This title likely refers both to his advanced age and to his spiritual authority as the last surviving apostle. His 2nd letter had been written to a church he symbolically called the Chosen Lady, and its members her children. In contrast, this 3rd letter is directed not to a church, but to an individual, Gaius. Yet both letters are connected. The 2nd warns against extending hospitality to false teachers, while the 3rd commends hospitality toward true servants of the gospel. Taken together, they form 2 sides of the same issue. Because of this connection, both letters are usually dated around AD 90. John's recipient, Gaius, bore a common Roman name meaning to rejoice or to be glad. The name was carried by notable figures such as Julius Caesar and Augustus, and it also appears several times in Acts, Romans, and 1 Corinthians, though the Gaius of 3 John is almost certainly a different man. Beyond this letter, we know little about him, yet John repeatedly calls him beloved or dear friend 4 times in just 15 verses, signaling deep affection and trust. 2 things stand out in John's opening greeting and prayer. First, his love for Gaius is grounded in truth. Christian love is not mere sentimentality, but flows from shared conviction about Jesus Christ. Their relationship rested on this foundation. Second, John had received reports that while Gaius was spiritually strong, his physical health was weak. Therefore, John prayed in verse 2 that Gaius would prosper physically as his soul prospered spiritually. His ministry was vital to the spread of the gospel, and his health mattered for the work of Christ. What brought John the greatest joy was not simply Gaius's friendship, but his faithfulness to the truth. Believers who visited Gaius returned to John with glowing reports, and this filled the elder's heart with joy. But what does John mean by truth? The Bible speaks of many truths: God as creator, God's attributes, worship, and more. Yet in John's writings, truth consistently refers to the truth about Christ. The apostles proclaimed a specific message: that God had acted decisively in Jesus to save humanity. Gaius believed this truth, loved it deeply, and demonstrated his faithfulness through action. His loyalty to Christ was not abstract, but lived out in tangible ways, so much so that others witnessed it and testified about him. The specific way Gaius lived out his faithfulness was through hospitality to Christian missionaries. John commends him in verses 5 and 6 for receiving these traveling workers who had gone out for the sake of the name, verse 7, the name being Jesus Christ. These missionaries did not depend on support from pagans. They relied entirely on the generosity of fellow believers. When they arrived in Gaius's region, though strangers to him, he welcomed them, cared for them, and provided for their needs. John stresses that this is not just ordinary hospitality. While hospitality is indeed a Christian virtue, Gaius's actions carried greater weight because he specifically aided those proclaiming Christ. By opening his home and resources to missionaries, Gaius became a partner in the truth. Though not a missionary himself, his support furthered the work of spreading the gospel. His love reported back to John, verse 6, was visible in his generosity. In this way, Gaius stands as a model. Not all are called to be missionaries, but all can contribute to the advance of the gospel through faithful support. John's third letter, therefore, should inspire believers even today to see hospitality and mission support as active partnership in God's work. In stark contrast to Gaius, John exposes Diotrephes, a man whose actions oppose the truth. 6 things stand out about him. 1. He held authority within the church. His influence was strong enough to control who was welcomed or excluded. 2. He rejected apostolic authority. John notes that when he wrote to the church, he says, Diotrephes will not welcome us. 3. He was self-centered. He loves to be first. His heart was consumed with pride and preeminence rather than service. 4. He spread slander. To elevate himself, he maligned John and other faithful believers with false accusations. 5. He was inhospitable. He deliberately refused to welcome fellow Christians. 6. He suppressed others' hospitality. Worse still, he punished those who wished to support missionaries, even expelling them from the church. John's verdict is sobering. Do not imitate what is evil. Diotrephes' behavior revealed that he had not truly seen or known God. Genuine knowledge of God produces love and partnership in truth, not opposition to it. John planned to confront him personally and call attention to his deeds. Underscoring the seriousness of such resistance to the gospel, after contrasting Gaius and Diotrephes, John introduces a third figure, Demetrius. His name, meaning devoted to Demeter, a Greek goddess, was common in the Greco-Roman world. The only other Demetrius in the New Testament was a silversmith who opposed Paul in Ephesus, but this is clearly not the same man. 3 things are said about Demetrius. 1. He had a good reputation. Everyone spoke well of him, not just a few witnesses. 2. He was commended by the truth itself. His life was in harmony with the gospel he professed. His conduct aligned with Christ's teaching. 3. He was personally affirmed by John. The apostle himself added his testimony as a kind of letter of recommendation. Why was Demetrius mentioned? Likely because he was the bearer of John's letter or a missionary being recommended to Gaius. Either way, John wanted Gaius to recognize Demetrius as a faithful brother worthy of support. John closes by expressing his desire to visit Gaius soon and speak face to face. Until then, his short letter was sufficient. The third letter of John presents us with 3 portraits. Gaius, who loved the truth and demonstrated it through hospitality to gospel workers. Diotrephes, who opposed the truth through pride, slander, and hostility. And Demetrius, who was affirmed by all as a man whose life matched his faith. The message for us is clear. Faithfulness to Christ must be lived out in tangible actions. Supporting the spread of the gospel, whether through hospitality, generosity, or encouragement, is an essential way of walking in the truth. Not all are called to be missionaries, but all are called to be partners in the mission of Christ. John's joy came not simply from personal affection, but from seeing his friend walk in truth. May the same be said of us, that our love for Jesus is evident in our deeds, that we support the work of the gospel in every way possible, and that we, like Gaius and Demetrius, bring joy to the heart of God's servants by living faithfully in the truth.